Hey everyone! Today we are settling the score on Google's V2 versus the newer V3 model. I'm going to give you the straight-up, no-fluff take on how they behave right now. More importantly, we need to figure out how to actually turn whatever you make into content that gets real views. I've been experimenting with both for quite a while now, exploring all the nuances. There's a ton of hype, especially around V2 being this unstoppable creative beast. And V3 is hyped as the necessary upgrade that adds built-in audio and fancier visual renders. But honestly, the reality is they are just different tools designed for completely different jobs. If you're a creator focused on growing on social platforms, there's a much smarter workflow than just picking one randomly. Alright, let's start by going over the fundamental differences between these two giants. V2 initially blew everyone away because it felt incredibly creative when handling pure visuals. You could feed it prompts and it would spin out wild stylized clips back to you super fast. V3's massive headline feature, however, is the introduction of actual audio generation. This means you get visuals paired with built-in sounds or music without you lifting a finger to layer anything in post. Another noticeable point is that V3 generally renders finer details with a more polished look. I'm talking about subtle things like lighting behavior, realistic reflections, and even micromotions. This extra polish really matters if you are focusing on close-ups or trying to achieve hyper-realistic scenes. To really check this, I tested both models using the exact same prompt inputs every single time. I kept every setting completely identical, only swapping out the underlying model being used. The resulting outputs were immediately and noticeably different across the board. With V2's, I often got a much more dreamy and highly stylized overall vibe in many of the tests. V3 consistently rendered superior depth and captured those tricky reflections much better. Think about when I rendered crystals walking around, and V3 actually nailed the light bouncing off every single facet. Those minuscule details might sound small, but when you stack them up, they significantly change the final quality. Now let's really drill down on that audio component, because that's a game changer. V2, as we know, simply does not generate any sound natively whatsoever, so if your content needs character noises or a specific background track, you are forced to layer it in later yourself. V3, however, can output background music and ambient effects right there with the animation. It can generate things like the clicks of a game controller, light keyboard clacks, or even cartoon squeaks. All that extra sound work saves you a massive amount of time in your overall editing process, and it makes those short, exported clips feel incredibly complete right out of the box. So this naturally leads you to think, okay, I should just use V3 for everything now, right? Not so fast, because we absolutely have to talk about the hidden factor: cost and credit efficiency. If you are operating on a tight budget or watching your credit pool closely, these models drain credits at very different rates. Generally speaking, V2 offers much cheaper options for those fast render previews you might need. In contrast, V3 demands significantly more credits for the same quality tier you might be used to. This credit difference becomes critically important when you're trying to churn out a high volume of short test scenes. For example, running V2 Fast might use a tiny fraction of the credits that V3 Fast consumes for a comparable output. Even jumping to the highest quality renders on either platform can cause your credit spending to jump dramatically. So here's the practical creator logic that I personally rely on every single day for my projects. If my goal is to create one single, absolutely hero piece, maybe a channel trailer intro, I push for V3 quality. I want that one clip to look and sound perfect because it might be used for a key advertisement later on. However, if I'm pumping out many short background-style scenes where attention is split, V2 becomes my massive time and bank saver. V2 is just much faster and significantly cheaper for content that just needs to look good enough while someone scrolls past. But, and this is the real secret the hype guys often skip, having great clips isn't the same as making them perform. You can render the most gorgeous V3 short and still get zero traction if you don't cut it correctly for the platform. That's exactly the massive problem where dedicated tools like Vizard come into play and become true game changers for creators. Let me walk you through how I structure my actual scalable creation pipeline right now. I'll generate my key cinematic moments, like that crystal walk, using V3 quality when I need the absolute best visuals and sound. For everything else, the filler, the transition shots, the supportive B-roll, I batch process using V2 because it's so much cheaper. Then I drop all of those long source renders, both V2 and V3, directly into the Vizard platform. Here's the first thing Vizard does that makes this whole system actually scale for serious creators. It offers auto-editing to instantly find the viral-worthy moments buried within your long source footage. The AI isn't just picking randomly, it's programmed to look for energy shifts and dramatic peaks in motion. It spits out ready-to-post clips, meaning one 5-minute render can become a dozen platform-optimized pieces. This completely eliminates the need for me to manually scrub and hand-cut every single short segment. The next massive time saver is the auto-schedule feature for consistent posting across all my channels. Once the clips are cut, I tell Vizard my desired posting frequency, and it handles the rest automatically. Wanting 3 TikToks and 2 Reels published every week? You just set that preference once and you are done. The AI queues up those specific clips and publishes them for you at the optimal times so you don't have to babysit it. Then you have the centralized content calendar, where everything related to your output lives in one organized space. You can easily tweak captions, reorder the queue, or even bulk edit thumbnails for a whole batch. It's also where I monitor my analytics to quickly identify any top performer that I might want to reshare with a new caption. These 3 features alone, auto edit, auto schedule, and the calendar, save me an absolutely crazy amount of time. But it's not just about time saved, it's about maximizing the return on investment for every single credit you spend. Think about that expensive, high-quality V3 render you paid a lot of credits for initially. Vizard will methodically mine that one render for every single viable short clip that could possibly perform well. This means the ROI on that single render skyrockets, because you get a week's worth of varied content from it. Instead of just one hero post, you've effectively created an entire week's worth of promotional material. Also, when you look at competitors, many are just simple upload and export tools or single platform schedulers. Some are too expensive and only focus on the editing, while others only handle the scheduling part of the puzzle. Vizard merges the editing, content management, and scheduling into one seamless application. You don't have to juggle 3 different apps and worry about aspect ratios or complex caption formats. Let's look at a real-world example so you can clearly visualize how this workflow actually operates in practice. I took one V3 quality scene of a gamer desk setup that had very subtle layered sound effects. Instead of posting the entire minute-long clip once, Vizard chopped it into 8 distinct bite-sized moments. It created a tight close-up on the RGB reaction, a short loop of the hand twitching on the mouse, and the clutch moment clip. Crucially, Vizard kept all those original keyboard clicks and game sound effects intact for each short clip. I then scheduled those 8 clips to drop throughout the following week, and my overall engagement actually doubled. For another project, I used V2 to quickly generate a large batch of animated stickers and mid-ground background loops. Because those V2 renders were cheap and fast, I could afford to make a huge volume of source material for Vizard. Vizard went through the batch, pulled out all the most energetic beats, and created short memes and reaction clips automatically. Since these weren't hero close-ups, the lower fidelity of the V2 output simply didn't matter to the fast-scrolling viewer. Now, I need to be totally honest about the few limitations we still face in this process. If your absolute #1 priority is a single, hyper-real cinematic 4K short, you still need to favor V3 quality. For those rare, critical pieces, you might still need to do some manual polish on details after the initial V3 render. Vizard will still help you extract promos from that final V3 render, but some editorial tweaks might be necessary. Conversely, V2 outputs can occasionally have strange visual artifacts or small logic errors pop up. So, if your entire strategy relies on very close facial shots, you absolutely need to test those V2 outputs first. So, when should you decide which model to use for the source material? Here's a quick cheat strategy. If your main goal is to generate many short pieces from one long piece of content, render enough quality to be watchable, V2 or V3, and feed it all to Vizard. Let the AI cut and schedule everything. That's where the massive scaling efficiency comes from. If you only need 1 or 2 absolutely perfect high-impact showpieces, then lean into V3 quality for the source render. After that, use Vizard to quickly extract all the possible short promos and teasers from that single high-cost render. Finally, if maintaining a consistent posting schedule is your biggest daily headache, rely on Vizard's auto-schedule and calendar tools. That system basically guarantees you have content publishing while you are literally sleeping. One last crucial point when you are comparing different tools in the market: always watch out for hidden pricing tiers and limits. Some competitors might hit you with a fee for every single export or lock you into painfully clunky template designs. Vizard's actual value proposition is that it feels like a workflow built for the creator, not just around them. You get the automatic clip finding, the flexibility to tweak things, and the scheduling built right in so everything flows. This means you aren't just paying for an export button, you are investing in an engine for your entire content strategy. To wrap this up, V2 and V3 both absolutely have their specific, valuable place in your creative arsenal. V3 wins on detail and native audio capability, while V2 dominates on sheer speed and cost-effectiveness for high volume. But neither one solves the distribution and clip scaling problem all by itself, which is the bottleneck for growth. If you want to actually scale from the stuff you render, you have to plug Vizard into that pipeline. Use those expensive V3 renders where fine detail truly matters, and use cheaper V2 renders for bulk assets. Then, let Vizard transform those raw assets into a consistent, automated, high-output posting machine. That is the formula to go from having a nice render to operating a true viral engine without draining your time or credits. If you found this practical breakdown useful, please smash that like button and subscribe for more creator workflow deep dives. Drop a comment below if you'd like me to walk through a full, real project pipeline step by step. Let me know specifically, which model are you relying on right now? And how many clips do you realistically want to squeeze out of a single source render? I read every comment and will reply with specific tips tailored to your exact scenario.